my name is Eva. I am senior consultant here in Notes in our headquarters in Copenhagen. And I'm here to tell you today about how to avoid the feared app graveyard. Do you know the feeling that you're rushing into the metro, trying to reach a spot somewhere to stand or somewhere to sit? You found it, and even before you think, you have your cell phone in your hand, starting to browse through emails, open the news, send money to your friends, check Facebook. All these scenarios, they're dream scenarios for app developers. Unfortunately, there are very many apps that do not reach this scenario. And all the apps that are not in this position, we call them that they lay on the app graveyard. So based on all the knowledge we have here in Notes, this presentation today is supposed to give you very specific tools on how to create great apps and avoid the app graveyard. And I have prepared two things that we're going to go through. One is the user journey or the customer journey and how to make it trigger the users in order to open your app. And second is how to create great content that will keep your users or your customers in your app. And in total, I have 4 recommendations, but we will come to that in the presentation. So, why are we even talking about, my presentation is based on UX and CX, UX experience and customer experience. So why are we even talking about this? And the reason is very clear. This is what we all do. Even though you're a designer or you're a developer, what you initially will develop is user experience or customer experience. And the same thing goes for marketing, even for HR. The people that you hire are supposed to handle your clients in your company. So in the end, we all do UX and CX, and that's why it's important. Just to get the terms correct, I have tried to specify what they mean. UX itself, it's about the user experience, so it's about the user, the end user of the product. And I have brought an example with this little kid who's in the toy store. And the product that he will be using, or the toy that he will be using, he will be the actual user, not the client. The client, on the other hand, that's his mom or his father or whoever is buying the toy. So that means that both the user and the client or the customer doesn't necessarily need to be the same person. And when you're talking about user experience and customer experience, we have to consider both the user and the customer. Lucky for us in the mobile business, it's normally the same person, but it's not always like that. So when I'm talking today about customer experience and user experience, I'm talking about the same thing, but just remember that it might not be the same person that you're designing for. The last term is customer service, and I'm not going to go very much into this, but it's just so that we don't confuse it with customer experience. Customer service is all the touch points that customers have with your company. So in the case with the kid in the toy store, a touch point could be when he is asking the staff of the store to help him find where the toy is placed, or when he's paying at the lady in the cash in the end. But if we want to create good customer experience and good user experience, we have to think about the entire customer or user journey and not only the customer service. And this is why the user journey and the customer journey is very important. And so, of course, there are user journeys that are more beneficial for app development. And I'm going to go through the 2 different user journeys that I see. And the first one is the one that I call from A to B. So it's basically like a linear user journey. And it could be something that the user only do once or only once a year, like for example, checking domestic energy and reporting that. So that's one thing you only do once a year. And then we might ask ourselves, do we really need an app for this? Because we have so many apps already installed on our phones, and if it's just there taking up real estate, it might not actually be very useful as an app. However, if you have a linear user journey, you might think about how can we make this one a repeating user journey. So that is something that is done more than once a year, and can like create a habit for the user. So that's the one I call the repeating user journey. So if you're able to form a repeating user journey, this is what we also would call a habit. And the acknowledged habit behavior author, Nir Eyal, he says about this looping behavior that companies that form strong user habits enjoy several benefits on their bottom line. Meaning that if you have a user journey that is repeating and looks like a habit, you have a very good fundamental for making good business. Nir Eyal has described this user journey or this user behavior as a hook, and he has defined the hook in 4 different sequences. The first one is what he calls the trigger, and that is what triggers the user to use your product or your service. The next one is what he calls the action, and the action is the action that the user actually do in order to gain their variable reward, which is the third sequence of this hook. And the variable reward obviously is what the user aims for when they start using your product. The fourth sequence is what he called the investment, and this is here where the user, they invest something of themselves. It could be money, but it could also be that they assign to a network, or they help each other and they gain knowledge or something else. But what's most interesting to look at when we're talking about mobile is the trigger and the reward. And it's because the action is basically just opening your app, and the investment can be many things, and it's very general for all services and for all products, and it's not very specific for mobile. So if you're interested in knowing more about the investment, I would recommend you to read the book that Nir Eyal has made that's called Hooked. But first I'll go into the triggers, what I see as good triggers in order to create a good user journey on apps or mobile. Nir Eyal divides triggers into external and internal triggers. The external triggers is all the things that the users get, or the trigger is actually something that tells the user what to do next. And the external triggers is all the things that are surrounding or that's coming from outside the user and telling the user what to do next. This could be advertisement, it could be notifications, it could be public mentions, it could be something on social media, it could be the very beneficial word of mouth. But it's all the things that are coming not inside from the user, but outside from the user. However, we know in the mobile industry that 70% of all uninstallments of apps is because of notifications. So it's outside or external triggers. And therefore, my first clear recommendation is to focus on the internal triggers. And what is an internal trigger? An internal trigger is something that tells the user what to do next, but it's deeply hidden in the user's memory. So it's about if the user is or the customer is somewhere with specific persons or specific people, what do we do when we're together with them? It could be something related to specific places or locations. It could be different situations, or it could be these daily routines that the users are not even thinking about that they're doing. They're just deeply habitually doing them. Another internal trigger is the emotions. And actually we know that the emotions is the strongest internal trigger. There are positive emotions and then there are negative emotions. And the negative emotions we know are stronger than the positive emotions. It is scientifically proven that people with depression are more likely to use digital products and services than people without depression. And that doesn't mean that we necessarily have to designed only for people with depression. But as examples, we have uncertainty when people are not sure about anything. We don't sit down and speculate about what is the answer. We just instantly Google it to find the answer. Also boredom, as my example in the metro. If we're standing there and we start feeling bored, we just take our phone up and we start looking at Reddit or other news apps. And even if you feel alone or if you feel loneliness, social media and digital social media products are more likely to be used. So these are just examples on how internal trigger can have a very, very strong effect on the users. And my first recommendation is definitely to focus on the internal triggers in a repeating user journey in order to create these hooks and to create a great user experience. So we don't have to tell the users what to do, but it's just it just lays within them. So that was the trigger part. The next part is about the rewards and how to create great rewards in apps. And I have highlighted 3 different ways you can create great rewards in a mobile apps. The first recommendation is that you should consider designing for micro moments. And micro moments is something that is defined from Google as these small moments. There is a lot of intent from the user, and it's about where to go, where to buy, where to see, where to get. These small moments that are very, very effective and can be utilized very much on apps. Obviously, when it's called micro moments, it also has something with time to do. But it goes without saying that good performance is a must on every app. So it's not so much about performance, it's more about these small moments where the user needs to do something. And a great example is the Danish mobile pay, where the users can send or transfer money to each other just based on cell phone numbers or your contact list in your phone. So if I want to transfer money to my friend, I just open the app, find him in my contact list, type in the amount and swipe, and then he has the money that I wanted to transfer to him. So this is a good example of, instead of having an entire bank on your app, and you just have this small sequence that you could also do in a bank, but taking out and done very easily in mobile pay. My second recommendation is to utilize the features on the device. And this meaning that the devices today, they come with tons of features. They come with AR kits, they come with voice control, they come with facial recognition, they come with geolocation. There are thousands of features that can be utilized in apps. But I see that more and more apps are not actually utilizing this or considering this when they are created. And that could be one of the reasons why they are going to the app graveyard. So definitely utilize features on the device, and I have taken a little example here. Apple came out with this AR kit last year, and we just made a sample app on this tablet device, where, as you can see here, we place a chair in the middle of the room. But as you can also see, it's actually not there. You can just imagine how it would look on the tablet. So if we have the chair, it would look somewhere like this. And this actually just took one developer 1 day to create. So as you see, a lot of these features that the mobile providers are giving us access to, they're quite easily used. And IKEA has already taken this technology into use, and you can now try to place different IKEA furnitures different places in your home. So it's quite accessible, and it's not very difficult to do. So my last recommendation is to take advantage of the platform that the users are already on. And with this I mean sometimes when we, for example, are talking about the straight user journey from A to B, it might be a better idea to understand what platforms the users are already using. Saying that if there are apps that they're already using, is there any way we can tap into these apps? Or can the app that I'm creating, can that somehow enrich the other platforms that we know that the users are doing in order to create a better user journey in all? And a very good example of this, I think, is an app called Headspace. It's for meditation, and it tracks how much you meditate in the app. But what you can also do is that you can transfer this data to Google Fit or Apple Health. And in this example here, I have done that because I already track all my health on Apple Health, and I have an overview of how much activity I'm doing, how much sleep I have, and now I can also see how much meditation I've done. So instead of having several platforms where I keep track of all this, I just get the data from the different apps I have and I collect it all in Apple Health. So I think this is a very good example on how you can actually make the user journey more valuable for the specific user instead of dividing the data into multiple different apps or platforms. So this was my presentation on how to avoid the app graveyard. And my recommendations on top of focusing on the internal triggers was to design for micro moments, utilize the features of the device, and take advantage of the platforms that the users are already on. So thanks for watching, and if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out.